Welcome to the channel. If epic sci-fi stories are your thing, you've just found your new home. Subscribe, like, and share the adventure. The message arrived on a Tuesday, encoded in frequencies that shouldn't have existed. Captain Maya Torres stared at the translation, scrolling across her command screen, each word hitting like a physical blow. The Hegemony Council had voted. Earth's petition for membership denied. Again. But it wasn't the rejection that made her hands shake. It was the reason. Insufficient cognitive development, she read aloud, her voice echoing in the empty bridge of the research vessel Persistence. Emotional instability, primitive social structures. Recommended observation period, 500 years. Maya had spent the last 3 years of her life documenting human achievements for this petition. Art, science, philosophy, music, everything that made humanity beautiful and complex. She'd compiled testimonies from the few alien species willing to vouch for Earth's potential. She'd even included her own grandmother's recipe for apple pie, because she thought it might show the Council something about human warmth and tradition. All of it had been deemed insufficient. The communications array crackled, and another message began filtering through. This one wasn't from the Hegemony Council. It was from Earth, from the United Terra Command. Admiral Kane's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Captain Torres, I know you're reading the Council's decision right now. I want you to know that every person on Earth appreciates what you tried to do. But I also want you to know that your mission parameters have changed. Maya's breath caught. Mission parameters didn't change unless we've just received intelligence from our deep space monitoring stations. The Hegemony isn't just rejecting us. They're planning to quarantine our entire system. No ships in, no ships out. They want to contain us like we're some kind of disease. The captain's fingers found the armrest of her chair, gripping it until her knuckles went white. 3 years. 3 years of diplomatic smiles and careful presentations. Of biting her tongue when Council members made jokes about human barbarism during formal sessions. 3 years of pretending that humanity's greatest strength, their capacity for emotion, for passionate dedication to ideals, was somehow a weakness. Maya, Admiral Kane continued, using her first name for the first time in their professional relationship, I need you to understand something. We're not giving up. We're not crawling back to Earth with our tails between our legs. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the void between stars. We didn't get this far by accepting other people's limitations. The screen flickered. And suddenly Maya was looking at herself, but not herself. It was a recording from the Council chambers, showing her presentation from 2 weeks ago. She looked so hopeful, so naive, as she displayed images of human children laughing, of elderly couples holding hands, of artists creating beauty from nothing but inspiration and will. The Council members had been checking their personal devices. We're going to show them what human emotional instability really looks like, Kane said. And Maya? We're going to make sure the galaxy never forgets. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. Maya closed her eyes and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy for generations. When she opened them again, she wasn't looking at the rejection message anymore. She was looking at the star charts, at the vast network of hegemony worlds that thought they could dismiss humanity with a bureaucratic stamp. Computer, she said, her voice steady now, begin recording. Personal log, Captain Maya Torres, Day 1 of the archival project. Today, the Hegemony Council made a mistake. They think our emotions make us weak. They think our passion makes us primitive. They think they can lock us away and pretend we don't exist. She smiled, and there was something in that expression that would have made the Council members very nervous if they could have seen it. They're about to learn that humans don't just remember everything. We archive it, we preserve it. We make sure it never gets lost. And when the time comes, we use it. The Persistence began changing course, heading not toward Earth, but deeper into hegemony space. Maya Torres had a new mission now, one that would require patience, cunning, and the very human trait the Council despised most, the ability to hold a grudge for as long as it took to see justice done. 6 months later, the Persistence hung in the shadow of Kepler Station, humanity's first covert intelligence hub. Maya had never imagined she'd be part of something like this, but desperation had a way of reshaping priorities. The station looked like a derelict mining platform from the outside, complete with fake radiation warnings and falsified salvage records. Inside, it hummed with the quiet intensity of a dozen human minds working toward a single goal. Dr. Alex Shinno. She had to remember, he was just Alex now. They'd all dropped their surnames for security, looked up from his workstation, as Maya entered the main operations center. The linguist's eyes were bloodshot from weeks of analyzing intercepted hegemony communications, but his expression was triumphant. "We've got it," he said without preamble. The Vrex Empire is planning to challenge the hegemony's trade routes through the Outer Rim. They're moving their fleet into position next month. Maya studied the holographic display showing ship movements across a section of space larger than Earth's entire solar system. "How does this help us?" "Because," interrupted Lisa from her station. Across the room, her fingers dancing over quantum encryption keys, the hegemony has been using their civilized reputation to maintain exclusive trade agreements with 15 different species. If those routes get disrupted, they lose about 30% of their economic leverage. The pieces click together in Maya's mind. And if certain information about those trade disruptions happened to reach the right ears, the Hegemony Council would suddenly find themselves very interested in making new allies, Alex finished. Even emotionally unstable ones. Maya walked to the central display, where a three-dimensional map showed the known galaxy. Red dots marked hegemony worlds, blue showed their allies, and scattered green points indicated neutral territories. Earth was a tiny yellow dot on the edge of everything, barely visible against the vastness of space. "This isn't just about getting Earth into the hegemony," she said quietly. "This is about proving that humans belong in the conversation. That we're not some primitive species that needs to be contained. It's about respect," added Marcus from the Intelligence Analysis Station. The former Marine's scarred hands moved over his controls with surprising gentleness. "Every species in the galaxy has had to earn their place. The hegemony wants us to wait 500 years because they think we're too young, too chaotic. But chaos isn't always destructive." Maya nodded, thinking about the conversation she'd been having with the other team members. Each of them had their own reasons for being here, their own stories of rejection and dismissal. Lisa had been told her quantum encryption methods were too innovative for galactic standards. Marcus had been laughed out of a military exchange program because human combat tactics were considered unnecessarily aggressive. Alex had spent years trying to contribute to xenolinguistic databases, only to have his work rejected because human languages were deemed emotionally complex. "Show me the timeline," Maya said. The hologram shifted, displaying a complex web of interconnected events. Trade route disruptions, diplomatic meetings, economic pressures, and military movements all tracked across multiple star systems. It was like watching a vast chess game being played across the galaxy. "The beauty of it," Lisa explained, "is that we're not actually lying about anything. We're just curating information, making sure the right people know the right things at the right times. And if they trace it back to us, they won't," Marcus said with quiet confidence. "We're using their own communication networks, their own diplomatic channels. Every piece of information we plant looks like it came from legitimate sources within their own systems." Maya studied the plan, looking for flaws, for moral ambiguities that might come back to haunt them. What they were doing wasn't quite espionage. No one was getting hurt. No military secrets were being stolen. They were simply accelerating natural political processes. "There's something else," Alex said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I've been monitoring the communications from the Hegemony Science Division. They're worried about something. There's been chatter about anomalous readings from this sector of space." "What kind of anomalous readings?" "The kind that suggest a species is developing technology faster than their psychological profiles predict. They're specifically mentioning humanity's rapid advancement in quantum computing and interstellar navigation." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "They're watching us. They've been watching us for longer than we realized. But here's the interesting part. They're not just concerned about our technology. They're concerned about our unpredictability." Every other species in the galaxy followed predictable development patterns. Biological advancement, then social organization, then technology, then space travel. But humans ... "We did it all at once," Maya finished. "We were still fighting wars on Earth while we were launching probes to other star systems." "Exactly. And that terrifies them. Because if they can't predict how we'll develop, they can't control how we'll develop." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. The hegemony wasn't just rejecting humanity, they were afraid of what humanity might become. And that fear was about to become their greatest weakness. The breakthrough came at 0300 hours on a Tuesday, transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels that shouldn't have existed for another 50 years. Maya sat in the captain's chair of the Persistence, now refitted with technology that made her original ship look like a paper airplane, and watched as the galaxy's most powerful civilizations began to dance to humanity's carefully orchestrated tune. The Vrex Empire had moved against the hegemony trade routes exactly as predicted. The Hegemony Council had responded with predictable diplomatic outrage. And then, as if by cosmic coincidence, 3 separate neutral species had suddenly developed concerns about hegemony trade practices, concerns that happened to be based on thoroughly documented evidence that the Persistence team had been archiving for the past 8 months. "Status report," Maya called out. "The Zolani Consortium just withdrew from the hegemony's resource-sharing agreement," reported David from the communications station. "That's the 3rd major ally they've lost this week." "And the hegemony's response?" "Panic," said Alex with satisfaction. "They're calling emergency sessions, reaching out to every neutral species they can find, trying to shore up their political base. 3 days ago, they contacted the Terran embassy for the first time in 2 years." Maya allowed herself a small smile. The Terran embassy was a single-room office on a minor diplomatic station, staffed by one very confused attach who'd been expecting nothing but form letters and trade permit applications. Suddenly, the Hegemony Council wanted to discuss mutual cooperation opportunities. "How long before they figure out what we're doing?" "That's the beautiful thing," Lisa said, looking up from her analysis station. "They can't figure it out because we're not doing anything illegal. We're not fabricating evidence. We're not hacking their systems. We're not violating any interstellar laws. We're just remembering things. Remembering things. Every slight, every dismissal, every time they treated human representatives with condescension. Every trade agreement they've manipulated. Every diplomatic immunity they've claimed. Every time they've used their advanced civilization status to avoid accountability. It's all archived, all documented, all completely legitimate." Maya walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the vast network of hegemony worlds, bureaucrats and politicians were discovering that their carefully maintained reputation for enlightened leadership had some very inconvenient holes in it. Not lies exactly, just ... incomplete information that was finally being completed. "Captain," Marcus called from his station, "we're getting a priority transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Kane." The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. and Maya was surprised to see him smiling. "Maya, I hope you're sitting down. The Hegemony Council has just formally requested a meeting with Earth's diplomatic corps. They want to discuss accelerated membership protocols and enhanced cooperation frameworks." "How enhanced?" "They're offering us a full seat on the Security Council, not as observers, not as provisional members. Full voting rights, same as the founding species." "And Maya? They want to discuss it next week." Maya felt her knees go weak. What changed their minds? According to their official statement, they've conducted a comprehensive review of humanity's contributions to galactic stability and cultural development. Apparently, we've been instrumental in maintaining the balance of power between competing factions. They don't know we were behind the intelligence leaks. Kane's smile got wider. Oh, they know. They absolutely know. But here's the thing, they can't prove it, and even if they could, they can't argue with the results. The information we've been distributing has actually made the galaxy more stable. Trade disputes are being resolved through proper diplomatic channels instead of economic warfare. Neutral species are making more informed decisions about their alliances. The Hegemony's own member worlds are holding their government more accountable. Maya stared at the screen, trying to process what she was hearing. They're rewarding us for manipulating galactic politics. They're acknowledging that we've been doing what they should have been doing all along. Humans don't just remember grudges. Maya, we remember everything. Every favor, every slight, every promise made and broken. And when we use that information, we don't use it just for revenge. We use it to build something better. The pieces fell into place in Maya's mind. The Hegemony Council wasn't just afraid of human unpredictability, they were afraid of human integrity. Every other species in the galaxy had learned to play the political game, to accept that certain things would always be forgotten, that certain injustices would always be overlooked for the sake of maintaining the status quo. But humans archived everything. And when humans achieved power, they remembered who had helped them get there and who had tried to stop them. "There's one more thing," Kane said. "They want you to lead the human delegation to the council." They specifically requested Captain Maya Torres, the officer who demonstrated exceptional diplomatic innovation during humanity's integration process. Maya laughed, a sound that contained equal parts exhaustion and triumph. "Diplomatic innovation. Is that what we're calling it?" "Maya." Kane's voice grew serious. "What you've done here isn't just about getting Earth into the hegemony. You've proven that humans belong in the conversation. That our way of thinking, our way of remembering, our way of caring about justice, that it all matters." The Hegemony Council chambers were exactly as Maya remembered them, but everything else had changed. The same crystalline walls rose toward a vaulted ceiling that seemed to contain actual stars. The same floating podiums arranged in perfect geometric harmony around the central speaking platform. But this time, when Maya walked into the chamber, the representatives didn't look through her like she was invisible. This time, they were afraid. Representative Torres, the Hegemony Chancellor's voice carried across the chamber with careful neutrality. "We welcome you to these emergency proceedings." Maya approached the central podium, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. 3 years ago, she'd stood in this same spot, pleading for humanity's inclusion in galactic society. Today, she was here to discuss the terms of humanity's integration into the hegemony's power structure. That the difference was subtle but profound. 3 years ago, they'd been deciding whether to let humanity join their club. Today, they were negotiating how to survive humanity's arrival. "Thank you, Chancellor," Maya replied, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "I appreciate the hegemony's willingness to revisit humanity's application for membership." Yes, well, the Chancellor's tentacles shifted in what Maya had learned was a gesture of diplomatic embarrassment. "Circumstances have evolved considerably since our last meeting." That was one way to put it. In the past 6 months, the careful balance of power that had maintained galactic stability for 3 centuries had been completely restructured. The Vrex Empire had discovered that their intelligence networks were less secure than they'd believed. The Zelani Consortium had learned that their trade partners were more manipulative than they'd realized. The hegemony's own member worlds had started asking uncomfortable questions about resource allocation and diplomatic priorities. And at the center of every revelation, every leaked document, every perfectly timed piece of information was a single common thread: humanity's obsessive need to remember everything. The Hegemony Council has reviewed humanity's contributions to recent galactic stability initiatives, the Chancellor continued, and we are prepared to offer Earth immediate full membership status, including voting rights on all major policy decisions. Maya nodded politely, but didn't smile. I appreciate the offer, Chancellor. However, humanity has some concerns about the terms of membership. A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. 3 years ago, they'd been rejecting humanity's application. Now humanity was questioning their offer? What concerns? Asked the Altarian representative, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's ambient light. The Hegemony's membership requirements include a clause about acceptable cognitive development and emotional stability, Maya said, consulting her notes. Given that these were the primary reasons for humanity's initial rejection, we need clarification about how these standards will be applied going forward. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Maya could practically hear the collective realization that humanity wasn't just accepting membership, they were demanding accountability. Representative Torres, the Chancellor said carefully, those criteria were established to ensure that new member species could contribute positively to galactic society. I understand, Maya replied. But our recent analysis of hegemony decision-making patterns suggests that these criteria may have been applied inconsistently. She activated her holographic display, and the chamber filled with data. Trading, records, diplomatic communications, economic agreements, military deployments, 3 centuries of hegemony decisions, all meticulously documented and cross-referenced. For example, Maya continued, the Benaran Collective was granted membership despite a documented history of aggressive territorial expansion. The Kith Empire was approved for full membership while actively engaging in economic warfare against neutral species. The Zelani Consortium received priority status despite clear evidence of manipulative trade practices. The representative stirred uneasily. Every species she'd mentioned was currently in the chamber. The common factor in all these approvals, Maya said, appears to be economic or strategic value to exist in hegemony members, rather than the stated criteria of cognitive development and emotional stability. Representative Torres, the Chancellor interrupted, what exactly are you suggesting? Maya looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative she could see. I'm suggesting that humanity's membership in the hegemony should be based on our contributions to galactic society, not on subjective assessments of our emotional development. And I'm suggesting that going forward, all membership decisions should be based on consistent, objective criteria. You're demanding that we change our entire admission process? I'm demanding that you follow your own rules, Maya said simply. Humans have a saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If the hegemony's membership criteria are valid, they should apply equally to all species. The chamber erupted in debate. Representatives argued in dozens of languages, their voices creating a cacophony that would have been overwhelming if Maya hadn't been expecting it. But she'd learned something important about galactic politics. Over the past 3 years, the species that shouted loudest were usually the ones with the most to hide. Furthermore, Maya continued, raising her voice to cut through the chaos, humanity proposes the establishment of a permanent historical review committee, responsible for maintaining accurate records of all hegemony decisions and their outcomes. The debate stopped abruptly. A historical review committee? The Chancellor asked. Yes, humans have discovered that memory is the foundation of justice. If the hegemony is truly committed to fair and consistent governance, then all decisions should be documented, archived, and subject to review. Transparency breeds accountability. Maya smiled, and this time it wasn't diplomatic. After all, if the hegemony has nothing to hide, then they should have nothing to fear from accurate record-keeping. The silence that followed was the sound of an entire political system realizing it was about to be fundamentally transformed. 1 year later, Maya stood in the observation lounge of the New Persistence, watching as the latest batch of diplomatic records were transmitted to the Galactic Archive. The ship had been upgraded again, this time with full hegemony technology, but Maya had insisted on keeping the name. Some things, she'd learned, were worth preserving. Final report of the day, announced Dr. Alex Chin, now serving as the chief xenolinguist for the hegemony's newly established Transparency Initiative. The Corellian trade dispute has been resolved through proper diplomatic channels, with all relevant documentation archived for public review. That's the 12th major conflict resolved this month, added Lisa, who'd been promoted to Director of Information Systems. The funny thing is, most of these disputes were actually easy to solve once all parties had access to the same information. Maya nodded, unsurprised. The Galactic Archive, humanity's gift to the hegemony, had transformed interstellar politics in ways that no one had anticipated. When every species had access to the same historical records, when every trade agreement was subject to public scrutiny, when every diplomatic decision was archived for future generations to review, the galaxy had become a remarkably more honest place. Any word from Earth? Maya asked. Admiral Kane sends his regards, Marcus reported from his position as Chief of Security for the Archive Project. Earth's third colony ship launched last week. The Hegemony Council approved the settlement rights without a single objection. Maya smiled. 3 years ago, humanity had been begging for permission to join Galactic Society. Now they were helping to rebuild it from the ground up. Captain, Alex said, his voice carrying a note of curiosity, I've been analyzing the long-term implications of the Archive Project. The changes we've made to galactic politics, they're permanent. Even if humanity withdrew from the hegemony tomorrow, the precedent has been set. Every species now expects transparency, accountability, documentation. And I think we've accidentally created the most stable political system in galactic history. When everyone knows that their decisions will be remembered, archived, and subject to review, they make better decisions. Maya walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were growing. Human scientists were making discoveries. Human artists were creating beauty that would outlast civilizations. And all of it was being carefully documented, archived, and preserved for future generations. The Hegemony Council called us emotionally unstable, she said quietly. They said our emotions made us primitive, unfit for galactic society. But they were wrong, Lisa said. No, Maya replied. They were right. Humans are emotionally unstable. We feel things deeply. We remember slights. We hold grudges. We care about justice even when it's inconvenient. We're passionate, unpredictable, and sometimes irrational. She turned back to her team, the humans who'd helped reshape galactic civilization through sheer stubborn refusal to let injustice go unremembered. But our emotions aren't a weakness. They're our strength. Every other species in the galaxy learned to accept that certain things would be forgotten, that certain injustices were the price of stability, but humans refuse to forget. We archive everything. We remember everything. And when we achieve power, we use that memory to build something better. The communications array crackled, and a new message began filtering through. Maya recognized the sender immediately. It was the Vrex. Empire, requesting mediation for a trade dispute with the Benaran Collective. Both species wanted the conflict resolved through the archive system, with full documentation and transparency. They're asking us to help them, Alex said with wonder. The same species that used to dismiss humanity as primitive want us to mediate their conflicts. Because they've learned what we've always known, Maya replied. Memory is the foundation of justice, and justice is the foundation of peace. She looked around at her team, these humans who'd taken their species' greatest supposed weakness and turned it into galactic civilization's greatest strength. They'd proven that emotion wasn't the enemy of reason, it was the fuel that powered the engine of moral progress. Earth doesn't forget, Maya said, echoing the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto throughout the galaxy. We archive everything. We remember everything, and we use that memory to build a better future. The new Persistence continued its journey through space, carrying humanity's gift to the galaxy, the radical idea that nothing should be forgotten, that every voice should be heard, that every injustice should be remembered and archived for future generations to learn from. And in the vast network of stars that comprised the hegemony, in the councils and chambers where the future of galactic civilization was decided, the representatives of hundreds of species continued to govern under the watchful eye of humanity's greatest weapon, an obsessive, emotional, absolutely relentless refusal to let the past be forgotten. They'd wanted to contain humanity's emotions. Instead, they'd unleashed humanity's memory, and the galaxy would never be the same.